Revolution Radio proudly presents, live from the heart of the Blue Ridge, Roanoke, Virginia. It's the Just Bernard Show with host Bernard Alvarez. Join Bernard as he shares topics that reveal the real matrix and empower your human experience, including world liberty, the esoteric, suppressed technologies, spiritual ascension, and human consciousness. Humanity has awakened, and our time has come to realize our full potential. And now, live from the Star City, your host, Bernard Alvarez.
Today, we're going to be discussing Love Trumps Hate. And before I even jump into this particular topic, let me just say that I am not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. If anything, those of you that know about me and know the work that I have been doing, it has been to, I don't know if you want to call it reform the elections, election reform, government reform, money out of politics, corruption out of politics, ending the oligarchy. I do not align with any particular party, and I did not vote for either of those people and never supported either one of them. So let me just start off by saying that I don't feel that either of them were the right choice. And we can jump right into this by acknowledging the fact of why were Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton the candidates? Why was this? How did it end up that someone like Hillary, when we know all the issues associated with Hillary, ended up being the candidate for the so-called left, which they're not even left anymore, as far as I'm concerned, and someone like Trump, a reality TV show, someone who's speaks in misogyny and he talks about hating immigrants and hating. Someone like this to represent the Republican Party. The Republicans didn't even want Trump. So here were like two people that nobody really wanted, and they ended up being the candidates. How did that happen? And if we look at the figures, if we look at the statistics of what happened during the primary, and we might touch on a little bit about what happened in the primary with Bernie and the Democrats and whatnot, but looking at it from objectively, looking at it centered and with clear eyes, the reality of it is that only 9% of the American people showed up to vote during the primary. 9%. 9% of the American people voted Trump and Hillary to become the candidates. Now, I know many of us in the activist world or in the alt media world, whatever we want to call it, the consciousness world, the awakening path, etc., etc. I know many of us don't feel that we can trust the elections. Many of us have turned our back on even bothering to acknowledge elections. Many of us believe that our vote doesn't count. But the reality of it is that in this 3D matrix, in this controlled reality, this oppressed consciousness reality, the oligarchs, the elites, whatever you want to call it, you can call them the Illuminati, I don't care, whatever. The reality of it is that they are in control, and this is their vehicle. The elections, U.S. elections, whatever, wherever you live in any country, elections are the form of government that they are perpetuating, even if it is, corrupt, even if it is rigged, whatever it may be. The reality of it is that looking at 9% of the people bothering to voice their opinion says something. Let's look at it from an energetic standpoint. Whether our vote counts or not, whether the elections are rigged or not, I look at it from an energetic level. And we are doing an energetic imprint on our global consciousness when we, A, decide not to participate, or B, uh, to participate, even if the people we vote for don't win, or even if we know it's rigged. The reality of it is that we are releasing an energetic intention, and if we are truly and we truly believe in the idea of energetic intentions, law of attraction, the awakening consciousness, all of these things, if we're not making the intention of participating, if we are not making the intention of creating some type of energetic imprint toward a desired goal that is, for the higher good of all people, whatever it may be, and we all have different opinions, and we'll get into that in just a second later on in the show. But you know, not voting, I don't know. I think it's a cop out. I think it's an excuse. I believe that it is. I do believe it's rigged. Of course, it's rigged. But to show that only 9% showed up says something about us. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it's something that we need to question, and something that perhaps we need to look deeper into. What does it mean that only 9% of the people bothered to show up to vote for the primary? What does that say about us? And what does that say about the system? If we don't like the system, what are we doing to change it? If we don't like corruption, what are we doing to change it? But that's neither here nor there. That's just one aspect of how we ended up with such, horrible, for lack of a better term, candidates running. Um, a lot of us, especially in the activist world, as I mentioned earlier, we kind of gave up. We kind of said, nothing's going to change, or it's going to be rigged anyway. And so another reason is the apathy. Another reason why we ended up with these two candidates is voter apathy. Um, and in that sense, that our vote is not counting. Let's look at it from again, from another objective way about the electoral college versus the popular vote. The electoral college, and I feel maybe it was useful, 150 years ago when we had to, drive 300 miles to go cast your vote or something like that. Maybe electoral college had its place. But in today's modern world with technology and whatnot, the electoral college is obviously not the best way to go about things, best way to handle an election like this. The electoral college makes it a lot easier for corruption. It makes it a lot easier to get an established, chosen president in there. And while we're talking about a chosen president, going back to our activist friends and those of us in the consciousness movement and alternative activism, etc., everybody had said that we all have this idea, this running concept that presidents are selected, not elected, and it was pretty it was taken for granted that Hillary was the selected president. So we have to ask ourselves if that's the philosophy that we're going to align with, that presidents are selected, not elected, then how did Trump win? What does that say about the election process? What does that say about our belief? And again, a lot of this has to do about our beliefs. So if our belief is that presidents are elected and not selected, how come Hillary didn't win? And are we now willing to revisit these personal beliefs that some of us have about this? And as we continue to explore how did Trump win? How did Hillary end up losing? How did the selected candidate end up losing? And if we are looking at it from a perspective that now we have to question, maybe the election wasn't as rigged as we thought. Maybe votes do count a little bit more than we thought. And if that's the case, we have to look at the fact that many people uh, in the, I don't want to say the left, but those that were not voting for Trump or any of the candidates from the Republican Party, many people had chosen Bernie Sanders, and Bernie Sanders was more popular. He had gotten more of the popular vote, of course, and with these super delegates in the Democratic Party, it was basically, the DNC, for lack of a better term, pushed and shoved Hillary Clinton down everyone's throat. And with that being the case, you ended up the Democratic Party ended up disenfranchising many people who would have otherwise voted for the Democratic Party candidate. So here's another reason why we see that Trump was elected. The many people who were supporting Bernie just said, we're not going to support your candidate. Well, we'd rather vote for Trump than vote for your selected candidate. And at the same time, we're looking at all the corruption that was bubbling to the surface within the Democratic Party. We had the Podesta emails. We had all the WikiLeaks surprises that kept coming up. We had the issue with Debbie Wasserman Schultz. And then even just recently at the last debate, the issue with Donna Brazile and her feeding questions to Hillary. So, I mean, people are going to get fed up. Of course, they're going to get fed up. Of course, they're not going to want to support anyone with 2 cents of integrity is going to bail and jump ship from a broken vessel. I mean, and again, I'm neither here nor there. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat, but I do understand why many of the Bernie people decided to jump ship. I understand why they left. I understand why they chose Trump. Um, Another reason that we have to consider and explore on Trump's victory was his lack of political correctness. And while I personally, for me, I mean, let's be realistic here. I'm like a five-tiered hate group candidate. I mean, I'm Latino, I'm Native American, I'm not a Christian, I'm LGBT, I'm anarchist. So it's like everything that the establishment or the that bigots hate. I'm pretty much all of those things. So hate, you know, I could be easily roasted at a KKK rally, for lack of a better term. So of course I am not going to support someone who doesn't like LGBT people, that doesn't like ethnicity, or doesn't like non-Christian values. Of course, I'm not going to support someone who talks that type of rhetoric. So, but I got to tell you, I respect him for being so frank. Political correctness has gone way too far. It absolutely has gone way too far. And this whole idea of always worrying about offending people has gotten a little bit out of control. I know many of my friends are, involved in the Democratic Party and whatnot, whatever. Actually, I have a lot of friends involved in the Republican Party, the Libertarian Party, the Green Party. I like to keep them evenly, I like to have a balance in my life because I feel it is important that we have discussion with all people from all political beliefs and around the political spectrum. But I will say that his frankness was a breath of fresh air for a lot of people. People were like, people that weren't bigots voted for him because he had enough guts to speak his mind. And we have to be honest about that. We have to be honest and look at how out of control political correctness has become in today's society. Winning the cultural war, well, let's say the left won the cultural war, whatever. Yay, we have equal rights for gays and whatnot. But I mean, that's just common sense. But to bully people, and this is exactly what ended up happening, was that the left would bully anyone who didn't think like them. The left would bully people that were confused about transgender terminology. It's like, okay, I I am in the LGBT community and I still get confused over the terminology. God forbid I say the wrong thing or someone's going to rip my face off. And Treva knows what I'm talking about. Are you a cis male? Are you this? Are you that? Are you L? Are you G? Are you B? Are you Q? Are you, I mean, it's gotten out of control. It really has. And people have been walking on eggshells. And because people are walking on eggshells and being bullied, they don't want to support that type of candidate. The candidate herself was bullying people and calling Trump followers deplorables, just and everyone on the left was just spewing hate toward the right. And don't get me wrong, the right is just as guilty. I'm just saying hate is not right, period. I don't care if it comes from the left or the right. And I'll go into my feelings on these protests of Trump in a few moments. And you might be surprised of what I say. But when we're looking at so many reasons why the left was not a welcoming, the left candidate, the candidate, was not a welcoming candidate to many people. People are fed up. The reality of it is that most Americans are poorer than they've ever been. Most Americans are afraid to speak what's on their mind nowadays. Most Americans are constantly uh, feeling I don't want to say victimized, because a lot of us have overcome that, but I do feel victimized by how crazy today's world has become and how crazy today's political arena has become. We've been distracted, and again, going back to that idea of propaganda from the government, we've been distracted to forget that we're still in war. Obama's droning children. Let's face it. Obama's still blowing up people with drones. I don't like it. And most people back in the glory days, for lack of a better term, of the Democratic Party, they wouldn't have stood for it either. So we have to look at the fact that the Democratic Party is no longer left. It is soft central right. They're soft Republicans, perhaps, is a good way of saying it. It's not, we have all become disillusioned. And because of that, it's very fair to say that many people decided to vote for Trump. On a positive note, actually, we have a lot of positive notes. I just wanted to create a scenario here for us that we can dig deeper into. On a positive note, I will say this. I watched Trump's acceptance speech, and I liked what I heard. I liked what he said about removing corruption. I liked what he said about rebuilding the infrastructure. I like what he said about giving, thousands of jobs, generating thousands of jobs. So he basically said many of the main things that Bernie Sanders was saying. For me, he, again, this is only my personal opinion. Donald Trump is the macho ego jerk off version of Bernie Sanders. That's all. They were both alternative. They were both quote unquote anti-establishment. Now, realistically, now that he's been elected, I don't think he's as anti-establishment as he came off to be. But that might have to go on to a whole nother show. I'll make a video on it or something like that. But anyway, um, when Trump was elected, and let's move into the. Actually, we're going to be coming up on just a commercial break in just a few minutes, but I guess I'll just say this now before the break. For those of us who truly believe and love, for those of us who truly have a grasp of this awakening that is happening on the planet, for those of us who are aligning with the awakening, we have to ask ourselves, do we want to perpetuate hate? Do we want to perpetuate fear? And while I am all for protesting, I am all for speaking up, I am all for civil disobedience. But these protests against Trump is as low vibration as he has been. And I do not feel that these left protests are doing anything to help heal the country other than basically a spoiled child that didn't get their way. That's all I'm seeing. That's all I'm seeing. Now, mind you, I am all for love and peace and, LGBT and immigrants and everything that Trump hates. I'm for, but I'm not for hate. I am not for destruction of property over a presidential election. It's disrespecting the people who voted for him. He won. We need to be put on our big boy and girl pants and say this is an election. This is who the people chose, and get over it. We lived through Bush. We've lived through much worse. I'm sure we're going to live through Trump. And ever so quickly, because hopefully now we're going to talk about solutions during the next half of the show. But ever so quickly, I want the Trump voters to question their choice in the fact that he is now pulling in every establishment person into his cabinet. He is pulling in everyone who he said he was against. So we need to ask ourselves, were the Trump voters duped themselves? Why, if he wanted so much change, why is he bringing in the establishment of the right establishment? There's left establishment, there's right establishment, and by the way, don't fool yourself. They're all friends. They all go to the same country club together. They all have parties together. Behind the scenes, they're all buddies. They're rich. They're their own club, and we're as George Carlin says, you're not a part of that club. They don't hate each other. They support each other. They give each other jobs. They give each other cabinet positions. There's a rotating door from the private sector to the government sector, and they go from lobbying to cabinet positions to governorships to ambassadorships. It's a small club, and you're not in it. So we need to ask ourselves where we.
And now, back to your host, Bernard Alvarez.
And welcome back to the Just Bernard Show here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. We are the number one listener supported talk radio station in the world. Remember to please keep supporting us so you can make a donation at freedomslips.com to keep all of us, no matter our opinions, on the air. That's what's so wonderful about the station. We hear everything from angels to guns and whatever it is without censorship. So we need this in today's day and age to keep the discussion going. Do what you can to support this radio station. Anyway, today's show broadcast is a reflection on the last week on the United States election. I'm calling today's show "Love Trump's Fear." Now, let's go into that. Why am I calling this show "Love Trump's Fear"? By all means, I do not, and I've got to say this very clearly, and I've said it a few times already during today's show. I have been invited to many Trump protests. I refuse to go. Why? I do not believe in attacking individuals. I believe in changing issues. When we start getting to the level of blaming people for our happiness or our joy, things get a little bit wonky. Talk about hero worship or giving away your sovereignty or not taking personal responsibility within your own life. If you truly feel you cannot live happily because of who was or wasn't elected, I challenge you now to take a closer look at your own life. One of the things that I speak about in my new book that I'm working on now, by the way, is that it is very important for us to take responsibility for our thoughts and for our emotions. We need to take a deeper look at who we're blaming, when the reality of it is our lives, we are responsible for our lives. Everything stems from us as individuals. If we don't blame people when we're happy, do you blame people when you're happy? Do you blame, oh my gosh, I'm so happy, it's your fault. Oh, I'm filled with so much joy. It's your fault. It's your fault I'm happy. Then what gives us the right to blame other individuals when we're unhappy? I do not believe in protesting individuals. So you will never see me at an anti-Hillary rally or an anti-Trump rally. You'll never see me at anything that attacks an individual. I need to know that person before I'm going to judge them. I'm not going to trust the media. So let's get that very clear out in the open here. Um, do we have a right to protest the Electoral College? Absolutely. I'd be with you 100%. Invite me to a let's reform the electoral process. I'll be at that protest, no problem. Do we have a right to protest against corruption in government? Well, actually, we have a right to do anything we want, but I'm just saying a basis, a basis within integrity to protest these things. I do believe that we need to remove corruption out of the government. I do believe we have to remove lobbying, corporate influence, um, all these things that both, by the way, and there's a meme going around today, which I'm so glad someone posted. It's Represent Us posted it. And it's an old one from like 2012 about Occupy Wall Street and the Tea Party. And the one thing they have in common, that we all have in common, is getting corruption and big money influence out of politics. So, if anything, this election is a call to action for us to unite. This is a call of action for us to find our similarities. Yes, I understand many people feel deflated. Many people are very concerned because of the rhetoric that's going out around there. Let's face it. Mr. Trump is not necessarily the most eloquent speaker. He does speak out of both sides of his mouth, depending on what day it is. But don't all politicians do that same thing? Doesn't every politician try to pander to their base? I mean, this guy was brilliant. He tapped into the anger of America. He tapped into the anger and he fueled that flame. That was absolutely brilliant. But from an objective perspective, that's propaganda. That's everything that we're supposed to be against. So it's neither here nor there. But let's stop attacking each other. Yes, people are depressed. They're angry. Their candidate didn't win. People put a lot of energy into this election, and God knows how long has this been going on now? 2 years. We've been, inundated with election propaganda. Whether it was before the primaries or during the nationals, all the campaigning. I mean, they're going to start campaigning in about another year and a half. Trust me, we'll be hearing about the next election, and people get involved. People get emotionally involved, and that is actually one of our weaknesses as a country. We get so dragged in by the media, and yeah, I'm even including Facebook. Yeah, I do propaganda. I do propaganda for love. I do propaganda for unity. I do propaganda for one human family. I do propaganda for consciousness. But not everyone does propaganda for things that are good for the good for all people. A lot of that propaganda pulls you into supporting someone or something that really doesn't align with that which you are, which doesn't align with that which your heart is telling you. You get emotionally involved. You get emotionally invested. I'm using Hillary as an example right now. People get emotionally invested, and when they don't get what they want, they feel deflated, they feel depressed, they feel angry. You know what? You're a human being. You have a right to mourn, but you don't have a right to harm another being. You have the right to be angry. You have the right to be outraged. I will not take that away from anybody. Anyone has the right to feel what they're feeling. We're human beings. My work here is to empower the human experience. So I'm not going to say don't be human. But I also do not agree with harming another person. Do as you will, harm none. You know, that's my personal, if you want to call it spiritual philosophy. We all have the right to do whatever we want as long as we're not hurting anybody. Now, let's talk about the hatred going back and forth. And I'm not talking about Trump's so-called hatred of gays or, Mexicans or whatever. Yeah, we all know he hates Mexicans. Okay? Somebody, I think I saw somebody post, show me an example of Trump's bigotry or whatever. The man said all Mexicans are rapists, okay? That he can't take that back. Let's be realistic here. He's not exactly Dalai Lama in his in the way he explains things. He does offend a lot of people, and I'm not saying that we're not allowed to be offended, but let's state the facts. The man said he hates Mexicans, wants to build a wall, for God's sake. And again, that's about immigration reform, and that's here nor there, and that's not really that's not an issue I'm really interested in, quite honestly. But this hatred, this disrespect of your fellow human being, this disrespect for those of us that live here in the United States, the disrespect for your fellow American citizen, the disrespect of the choice to vote for whoever it is you want. We're seeing people being, I've been attacked. I voted for Jill Stein. I'll say it proudly. I voted for Jill Stein. Did I think she was going to win? No. Did I think she was probably the best candidate? No. I probably voted for Jill the way a lot of people voted for Trump. They didn't want Hillary. And I'm getting attacked for voting green. A progressive. Do I consider myself a progressive? Yeah, I consider myself an anarchist, a libertarian, all of these things. I don't consider myself liberal. I don't consider myself conservative. But yes, even people who voted for Jill Stein are being attacked. And these are the ones that are even in the quote unquote the backyard of the left. Well, again, they're not the left, by the way, people. Let's make that very clear. Democrats are not the left. There is no left in the United States anymore. There isn't. Let's be realistic. They're the other side of the right or of the conservatives, but they're not liberals. They're not left. They're corporate. They're corrupt. They speak. They tell the average person what they want to hear, but they're elite. They're all in bed with the same people the Republicans are in bed with. So there is no left. However, for the so-called, I'm doing the air quotes, the so-called left to be attacking people that voted green who are supposedly on the same quote unquote left side with them, you know, we can't do this. We are not to change anything. Is Trump the best vehicle for change? I don't know. Is it change? Oh yeah, it's change. It's change. And maybe that's what people wanted. And maybe that's what we need to understand and to accept and to realize that change is coming. Change is here. And we should promote change. Those of us that are on the awakening path, and when I say that, I talk about it quite a lot in my on my shows and in my work and in my classes and the work that I do here on the ground locally about this cosmic awakening that is happening. Do you believe that there is a great awakening of humanity taking place? And if you do believe there is a great awakening of humanity taking place, do you understand the process? Do you understand that this great awakening of humanity does not rely on one single event? Do you have enough clarity and discernment to understand this election does not represent this awakening process in either direction? It is just a part of the bigger picture of the great awakening of humanity. If anything, when we talk about this quite a bit, many of the guests that come on the show talk about it. We talk about, 5D reality, ascension, the fifth dimensional consciousness, et cetera, et cetera. And we also talk about how many people slide back and forth from 3D consciousness into 5D consciousness, and how events like this one single event, this one day in the whole scheme of the path of cosmic global awakening, this one day is not going to change things, but it can change things for you on your personal ascension process. Are you going to get stuck in 3D? Are you going to let this, are you going to identify with this one election? And the same goes for everybody else who voted for Trump if Hillary were to win. If Hillary would have won, would it have been the end of your awakening? Would it have been the end of your ascension? Would you have to move into 3D reality and get caught up in the emotional, ego based conundrum and illusion? Let's remember number one, our planet has been consciously suppressed and oppressed for thousands of years. And now, with technology and media and all the tools that the elite have, they do everything they can to suppress our consciousness. Are we going to let them win? Are you going to fall for this distraction? Are you really going to take sides on left or right or Trump or Hillary? Is this how we are going to define ourselves as a race? We must remember, we must at this point, especially now, remember that this is all an illusion. The only thing that we have to choose right now, the only election that is going on right now in the big picture and in the grand scheme of things, is your vote and your support of love or hate. Hate or love. Who are you going to vote for? Who are you going to support? What are you going to align with? Are you going to align with love and expansion, joy, support, our one human family, one love? Or are you going to vote, support, align, and descend to the lower vibration of hate, division, anger, depression? That is what we need to ask ourselves. And if we feel we cannot control our anger, we cannot control our hate, we cannot control our depression, I would seriously challenge those of us who are caught up in this hate, anger, and depression. And this goes for anyone, whether it be Trump supporters or Hillary supporters or Johnson supporters or Stein supporters or Bernie supporters. We need to ask ourselves and challenge ourselves to do something about it, to do something about our vibration. Who are we aligning with? Are we aligning with our higher selves? Are we aligning with love? Are we aligning with hate? This is not a time for humanity to divide. This is not a time for hate to win. We must accept what is being presented to us from an objective standpoint and do what we can to create the change within ourselves in order to generate the change outward. Your change, we all talk about change, change, change. Oh, yeah, Trump represents change, but he represents change. He's not change. You're change. Oh, Bernie represented change, but he's not change. You're change. We must change ourselves. We must learn. The very first thing we must learn is respect. To respect ourselves, not to sink to the level of divisive rhetoric, of divisive, hateful arguing, disruption, protests, outrage. Yeah, I'm fine with outrage. I have no problem with outrage. It is when you act out and hurt others in that outrage that you're creating and generating the very thing that we are all supposed to be working against. We are supposed to be working toward expansion, toward love, toward unity. We've been duped, people. We have been duped again. Who won? Trump didn't win. Hillary didn't win. Trump supporters didn't win. You know who won? The managers, the elite, the Illuminati, whatever words you want to use. Those who oppress human consciousness, that's who won. Because everyone's fighting and bickering and fell for the same show again. We've been duped and we fell for it again. When are we going to learn? When are we going to learn? How many elections have you lived through? Do you forget that quickly every 4 years? This happens every time? Are we that, is our short term memory that bad that we forget? It's a game. It's a game. It's a dog and pony show to suppress our consciousness. Hillary supporters feel duped. Some Trump supporters feel duped. I say we all need to take a close look and say, we've been duped. We fell for it again. So now, your choice, your election. Will love Trump hate? Your choice. Will the elite continue to divide us? Will the media continue to divide us? Are we going to fall for that same old ego game where our ego falls for it and we get offended and we get angry and we can't? It's time to put on our big boy and girl pants and take responsibility. Let's look at this objectively. Enough is enough. We have a choice now to evolve or descend into chaos. We have a choice now to love or hate our brothers and sisters. We have a choice to realize that this is an illusion, people. It's an illusion. Don't let them win. I've seen so many friendships end. I've seen relationships end. I've seen people walking out off their jobs. I mean, all over an election? Really? Really? Are we that unevolved that we still haven't figured it out? I don't think so. I think we all already know better. Actually, I know we all already know better. Stop falling for it. We can't do this anymore. It's time for us to mature. There's time for us to get ready to generate love, to raise the vibration. So Trump won. Big whoop. So Hillary lost. Big whoop. Actually, in another world, Hillary won. Big whoop. I vote for you, the people. I vote for humanity. I vote for me. I vote for the evolution of human consciousness. I vote for love. And I vote not to fall for it ever again. And I didn't fall for it this time. And I know many of you out there didn't fall for it either. But let's stand in that love. Let's stand in that understanding and let's embrace one another. Let's learn to have a discussion. Let's learn to speak with respect to one another again. We're not going to survive, people. This is not about who won. This is about the survival of humanity. This is about the evolution of humanity. And if we keep acting like little children, bickering and complaining and moaning and groaning because we didn't get our way or somebody's being mean to me, those Hillary supporters are being mean or those Trump supporters are being mean, mommy, mommy, mommy. We all talk about not wanting a mommy state, a nanny state, but yeah, we're acting like children. Put on your big boy and big girl pants and learn to respect each other once and for all. Or you know what? You will be punished and sent to your room of civil war, of nuclear annihilation, of ecological disaster, of the earth just saying, I'm over it. I'm shaking you off like a bad case of fleas. There will be consequences. Do we want to generate that type of vibration? That's all I have to say. Be respectful, take responsibility. And if you need somebody else to make you happy, I would definitely challenge you to take a deeper look within yourself. Please, people, we are one human family. I love you. I love all of you. And just like a family, I may not agree with all of you, but you're all my brothers and sisters. And we need to respect each other as one human family.